What's next for transportation energy? On today's episode, a conversation with John Eichberger, Transportation Energy Institute's Executive Director, and Jeff Hovey, TEI's Vice President, regarding how consumers feel about transportation vehicle and fuel choices.
So, Jeff, we're getting ready to publish our new consumer survey report where we went out and interviewed more than 1,000 customers about their mindset in regard to transportation, fuels, vehicles, and stuff. And I think one of the critical things, and you and I chat about this when we started to put the paper together, is we need to set the stage because consumer mindset changes all the time. So this survey was taken middle of May. At that time, the average national gas price was $3.60 a gallon. The average oil price was just over 80. We were at 4.5 months of declining consumer sentiment in the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey. Since then, it's gone up. But at the time, we asked them, how do you feel about the economy? 57% said they were pessimistic about the economy. Right. Now, you take that beyond, we also asked them, do you think now's a good time to buy or release a new vehicle? And half of them said, no, it's a bad time. Almost 2/3 said they think prices for vehicles will go up next year. And so that's important context as we were talking to the customers. That's where their mindset was. And, we've known, every month it changes, but that snapshot in time is where they were mentally.
Yeah, I think there at the time the survey was done, and even today, there's a tremendous amount of fear out there as far as, how much disposable income do people have, and we hear the anecdotal stories of home buyers, getting, pushing out, large purchases on new vehicles, on homes until they're much later on in life. And I think that's really indicative of some of the responses, that we saw in the survey. People kind of pumping the brakes on a lot of things, a lot more conservative, still, fairly pessimistic about what they're hearing, but yet at the same time, more errands, more time traveling around doing errands or activities, and maybe less time on commuting. Right, folks are still looking at working at home or what have you. But so yeah.
Some of them said, it was funny. Some of them said they were driving less this year than last year, but I think you hit a key point. They're probably not driving to the office as much, so it feels like they're driving less. But when we look back at the pandemic, we had that major drop off in vehicle miles traveled. Within 2 months, vehicle miles traveled was back to almost to pre-shutdown days. They weren't going to the office, but as I've said on many programs before, Americans don't sit at home.
No,
they don't.
No.
They're not going to stay home, even if things are shut down.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this inherent need to move around, and even if it's like, ooh, I gotta go get a gallon of milk, you don't really need to get a gallon of milk, but it gets you out of the house,
Exactly. I gotta get out and see people. So a couple of things in the survey I thought were interesting. Now, the way we did the surveys, we asked them obviously demographic profiles. In this report, we break down responses to see how responses differ between males and females, different age groups, different education categories, different income groups, whether you're in the West, Midwest, South, Northeast, whether you're in rural, suburban, or urban communities. So we look at all those crosstabs throughout the report, but in general, we look at the American public as a whole. We still see significant sensitivity to gas prices. 72% said that's the number one issue when selecting where to buy fuel. And almost 70% said they would drive 5 minutes out of their way to save 5 cents a gallon. Yeah. And when we're thinking about this energy transition, understanding that consumer mindset is so important, because if we're going to offer them a product that's more expensive, it's going to be hard to get them to accept that one.
Yeah. I really struggled with actually some of those results too, in the sense that, you look at the historical price of gasoline and even diesel fuel. It's been relatively flat. I mean, for a long period of time, when vehicle efficiencies there's a lot of cars on the road. They're getting 40 miles per gallon today. So,
yep.
I think historically we've done this survey year over year, and that's a common response.
Yep.
Yes, I'm very sensitive to this, but at the same time, we are becoming more efficient with our vehicles. And, I guess it's right at the it's the only thing that's posted right at the curb. This big
Yeah.
price out there. Everybody's sensitive. Everybody sees it. It's very, very public. But at the end of the day, the number of dollars going into fuel seems to be less.
I've always questioned these responses. We've been doing this. I've been doing this with NACS for 20 years.
Yeah.
I believe consumers are extremely price sensitive about fuel. They hate paying for fuel. And because that price is in their face every day, all the time, they know that price. I don't think they're that as sensitive as they say they are, but they want us to think that.
Yeah.
It's always about, I need to get the best deal on fuel, but I think there's so many other factors that we know how busy consumers are. We know there's other factors that go into it. But when you ask them, do you care about gas price? Well, yeah, I care about gas prices. Absolutely. They need to be lower. And every response you're going to give you is to try to drive that price lower and say, yeah, I'm angry as I can possibly be, so drive the price down. When in reality, I think that they're maybe not that sensitive, because you look at the trends in their purchase behavior and it doesn't really pan out the way their survey responses would indicate.
Yeah. Yeah. There is definitely a split in society, right? Because you got those that will only put premium in their vehicles.
Right.
They've spent a lot of money on this vehicle. But they're trying to take care of their vehicle. So you've got that sector. And whether it's better or not, I'm not judging on the type of fuel. But then you've got folks that pull up to a pump and they're looking at a price for something like E15, and it's several pennies cheaper. And we're seeing a big up. Well, it seems like we're seeing an uptick in E15 at retail.
We are, and we actually asked a question about that. So I know, according to Growth Energy, there's about 5,000 sites, close to 5,000, selling E15 now, which is a big increase over 2 years ago. Of the survey respondents, about a third said they had been offered E15 when they went to refuel. Of those, 42% said, yeah, I bought it. So we asked them why. And it's pretty split. Yeah. Most of the responses are it was cheaper, has a higher octane because it's 88 octane compared to 87, or they thought it was better for the environment. So there's some strong marketing signals there as to why they actually purchased E15.
I was kind of shocked. I mean, I think it was like 45% said they did it for the environment.
Yeah.
The perceived benefit of biofuels, in the mix. And granted, they're mostly in the Midwest, I assume, as far as the retail's offerings go. And so in the Midwest, you're surrounded by the biofuels discussion and what that does to your, to be able to reduce your emissions.
You would think that, but when you look at who actually purchased it, the Midwestern category of respondents was not the leading one. If I remember correctly, it was actually East. Because I live in Virginia and I buy E15 quite often. It's very well represented out in this market. So it was interesting. I really expected to see the Midwestern respondents be much more enthusiastic about E15. And at least those who answered the survey, that was not how it played out as I would have expected.
Well, I missed that one. That one. Yeah. Okay. And that is pretty shocking because it started here. It started in the Midwest.
Right.
Obviously, it's produced in the Midwest. So that's
maybe prices in the Midwest aren't high, so that price delta is not as much of an incentive as it is in markets where the gas prices might be a little higher. Yeah. You never know. I mean, there's so many. Yeah. That's the thing. This survey gives us some ideas to have a conversation, but to give you a definitive answer as to why somebody did something, there's so many variables that go into it that we can't cover in one survey, even one report that we publish.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really good survey, though. I mean, I think that it's very interesting to look at the results year over year and how things change. I was looking at it more so from what's the consumer feeling today as far as their level of confidence, and because to me that's the biggest indicator. Yeah. We always say that the consumer is going to drive this market. They do. I mean, that's what retailers do. I mean, they serve the public. And so really trying to hone in on that to get a feel for where folks were at, the demographics too, especially on age, where we've got, the boomers are retiring and, these
They don't
massive
like change.
populations. No, no,
The
no, they
survey made it
don't.
quite clear. They do not like
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
But to
You
your
know,
point on year over year, so we asked last year, do you have a positive attitude towards electric vehicles? And then we asked them again this year. And so I thought the results there were kind of interesting. So 44% of respondents this year said they had a positive attitude about battery electric vehicles. 30% had a negative. But then we asked them, has your attitude changed? 31% said they were more positive this year. Only 18% said they were more negative.
yeah,
And so you're starting to see, this was in May, so there have been a lot of changes in the electric vehicle programs from the federal government beginning of 2025. Yet the consumer I think they're recognizing there's more models available.
Yep.
They're better looking models. They're better performing models. The number one reason why people had a negative attitude is not enough charging infrastructure.
Yep.
And 59% of respondents said they thought finding a public charging location would be difficult in their market. And so there's still an opportunity there, which is why the Electric Vehicle Council exists from TEI, so we can help provide some guidance as to how we build out the infrastructure to support these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was pretty promising. The EVs have been kind of niche for a little while, this emerging market, but now a lot of the OEMs, they're piling on, regardless of where CAFE regs are going or federal policy is pushing it. They're building them, and it's not just light duty anymore either. So. So I think you're right. They're becoming more visible. And even and I think that was kind of the importance of the charging infrastructure, right? It's this safety feeling, this feeling that if, I might not need it, but I want to know it's there in case something happens. I just want to be able to see it to believe it or something. I don't know, but.
Well, more than half of the consumers said that they believe they had a place to charge at home. If they were to buy an EV, they think they have a suitable place to charge at home. So, this need to have in public available charging infrastructure, the perceived need may be higher than the actual need, but that perception is going to drive purchase decisions. If they don't feel confident, they don't feel, I know where I can charge when I need to charge, there's a lot of consumers that are going to say, I'm not going to take the risk.
Yeah. I think the early adopters were much more flexible and changing their schedules and changing how they did their day-to-day activities and stuff. This next wave of adopters, they're going to be much more critical, and they're going to say, yes, I absolutely need public charging, and I want it to look just like a C-store. I want it to offer this, and I want it to offer that, and they're going to be more critical. They're not going to be as forgiving as the early adopters. So
as you know, for those watching at home, at your office, this study is a big study. There's a lot of questions in there. What we have done in the report is not a whole lot of commentary. There's not a whole lot of analytics. It's just, here's what the numbers are. We want people to interpret the data for themselves. We're not trying to influence how people interpret the data in the report. But for each category, we are breaking down the national average response, and then the male response, female response, age group response, regional response, a variety of different demographic cuts. So we can start seeing where the population is united and where they diverge, and upon what lines. And that could help us figure out, how do we bring different products to market? How do we actually encourage consumers to try something new? Where do we try it? Who do we market to? All those things are critical. And I think this paper is an opportunity to provide an initial kind of toe in the water to have a broader conversation about market dynamics and market opportunities.
What's Next for Transportation Energy is a production of the Transportation Energy Institute. Find out more about us at transportationenergy.org.